This is it, folks. Braves versus Mets. Win, and you're in. Yes, welcome on into Braves Today podcast, your source for news, notes, updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. You can follow me on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. He's Christian Rauh. You can follow him on Twitter at Christian S. Rauh, R-A-U-H. You can find all of our written work, bravestoday.com. It's the Braves Today Substack. I just dropped a state of the position on shortstops recently. Christian dropped a great piece about Ozzie Albies batting righty only. Last week, we had a breakout prospects piece. A lot of good stuff over there at the Braves Today Substack. Again, bravestoday.com, and it's all free. But today, Christian, we're going to talk about this Braves-Mets matchup. We're going to talk about the pitching matchups. We're going to talk about how the offense has been hot recently. We're going to talk about the possibility of getting in and the Mets also getting in if Arizona loses out. But before we do all of that, heading into tonight's matchup, Braves-Mets in Truist Park 4-3. How you feeling about this?
Man, I'm ready to run through a wall, to be honest with you. It's just an exciting time for a baseball fan. It's not exactly, I think, what you wanted as a Braves fan heading into the end of the year. You wanted to probably already have this clinched. You wanted to have that champagne bottles like the Phillies did last night, clinching the NL East title. So a little bittersweet moment, knowing that you're not going to win the title for the first time in quite some time, Lindsay. But regardless, it's exciting. You're heading into some meaningful baseball this week against one of your biggest rivals. If you win the series, you're back in playoff contention. And if you sweep the series, you're holding on to a really pretty reasonable spot with the last 3 games against the Royals. Yeah, I'm excited. I think this is exactly what you live for as a baseball fan, getting ready for October. And really all we're getting, Lindsay, is we're getting extended playoffs. It's exactly where we're at right now for the Braves. This is the playoffs.
Given all of the injuries the team has had, given how bad the offense has been at times this year, how you've dealt with injuries, not only to the lineup, but also the rotation a bit. Ronald Lopez on the IL again. Fried was out for a while and all that. The fact that you have the ability to win against the Mets and then handle business against the Kansas City Royals and make the postseason is amazing. And I can't think of many other teams that could have dealt with this amount of injury to this many players, as many top tier players, and still be in this ballpark. So I think we need to acknowledge and recognize that, hey, this isn't normal. Like most teams would be out of this. I was writing a freelance piece about the Cubs the other day. They've used 7 starting pitchers all year. Like they've had virtually no pitching injuries, 7 different starters all season. I think it's either 7 or 8. And they are well out of the postseason, right? Like it's just having the health or not having the health and still being here is great. But I want to talk about this matchup because I think I am more optimistic now than I think I was 2 weeks ago about Atlanta's chances of making the postseason. And it's because they've been actually really good in the last 5 or so weeks. And I don't quite think we give them enough credit for it. I pulled the team's performance since August 10th. And then I pulled the offense's performance in the last 30 days. And all of these numbers are surprising because we had talked about how so much of this season outside of that first month has been barely being over 500. And that was the issue, is you were coasting on the early record. You were 17-8 in April. And then from that point on, you were 13-14 in May, 14-13 in June, 12-13 in July, 16-13 in August, and all of that. Since August 10th, this team is 25-16. It's a 640 winning percentage and is right behind. It is close to April's pace. April was a 680. So you're playing close to how you were playing in April in the last 6 weeks. And 25-16, you've been good. And I think as much as the pitching staff's been part of that, because they've been part of that all season, I don't think we realize how good the offense has been in the last month. So, last 30 days, who do you think has the best batting average on the team?
Ooh, man.
Because the obvious answer is Marcell Ozuna, right?
Yeah,
Like, that's
I
what
was
everybody
I was gonna
assumes.
say Ozuna. I know that the home run streak hasn't been there, but he's still bad. So yeah, Ozuna. I'm guessing not though, since you said it's the obvious answer.
Right. He's batting 320 over the last 27 games of 30 days. Part-time player, he doesn't count. Eli White's batting 333. Matt Olson is batting 343 with a 1.133 OPS in the last 27 games. He has 8 homers. He has 33 RBI in 27 games. Like Matt Olson, his slugging is almost 700. This is 2023 Matt Olson right now, which is wild to think about because we spent so long talking about, hey, what is wrong with Matt Olson? He's having this awful start to his season. He has now rebounded. He now has 29 homers and 98 RBI. He is 1 homer and 2 RBI away from extending his league leading streak of 30 home run, 100 RBI seasons to 4. And to me, that's one of the biggest stories right now behind this late season surge for Atlanta is just how good Matt Olson has been. But I don't like he's not even the only one, but he's obviously the biggest success story here.
Yeah, it's been incredible. This is finally what we're seeing from this Braves offense, what we've been wanting all year, Lindsay. It's finally starting to show right now. And you mentioned stats going back to August 10th, and I'll just throw in some in the last 7 games. What we've really started seeing from the Braves, they're leading all of baseball with 18 home runs and a 979 team OPS in the last week. We are finally starting to see that Braves offense that we expected to see all season long. And yeah, dare I say, if we got this all year long, barring injuries or not, this is a team that we would have had the 100-win expectation that we thought we were going to get. So they're getting hot at the right time, which is exactly what you need. The pitching staff still doing their job, but the offense was the biggest question marks all season. But if those question marks go away, how can you not be confident? Going back to that thing you said at the beginning of the show, how can you not be confident more now than you were 2 weeks ago?
Yeah. Another note in that home run streak, Michael Harris has 8 homers in that same span. So he's actually tied with Matt Olson in home runs. Now he had that giant series in Cincinnati, but Michael Harris moving to the lineup to the leadoff spot and getting back on track. He's batting 298 in this stretch in his last 30 days. 870 OPS is second best on the team. You mentioned Marcell Ozuna had that power outage where he had 2 extra base hits in a month. It was nuts, barely any RBI, but Michael Harris is getting on base. Matt Olson's driving him in. And so you just brought back Ozzy Albies. He struggled his first 2 games back. He hit that home run in the final game against the Marlins on Sunday off a righty, if I remember right. And so now you have a situation where the top 6 of your lineup is Harris, who's hot, Ozzy Albies, who is getting his feet back underneath him. It is Marcell Ozuna, who even during the slump still batted 320. It is Matt Olson, who's been nuclear. It is Jorge Soler, who only batting 235, but with an 850, and has the third most walks on the team in that stretch. He has 11 walks. Ozuna and Olson are the only ones ahead of him in walks. And then Ramon Laureano, still batting 293 during that stretch to be right at 300 for his Braves career. And he's arbitration eligible this offseason, so he could come back. We'll dive into that more in an offseason package, I think. Here's another thing that I think is helping towards the bottom of the order. Gio Urshela batting 258 in this same stretch. And he's even better in the last 7 days. This feels this is the closest I've felt like you have the offense you thought you were going to have all year. And I don't know what took so long, but I'm glad it's back.
Yeah, you talk about some of those names, and 3, 4 weeks ago, we talk about you don't get excited about some of those names. You're just like, "Yep,
Right.
they're there. They're in the lineup." At one point, Lindsay, on this show, we talked about, is it time to move Marcell Ozuna out of the 3 spot?
Yeah.
We talked about that. Like,
Mhm.
now there's no doubt in my mind that if you move him, we're going to war. That's just you can't have that happening. No, I think that where we're at right now, having all those names taking off, it's exactly goes back to they found a way to overcome all these injuries and still be ready to play potential October baseball. And
Mhm.
if they make it in, they're gonna dance, man. They're gonna boogie. They're gonna be a team that is going to be very dangerous in the postseason with that pitching staff and what this offense looks like right now. If they continue to stay at the peaks and don't go to any more valleys in these next 6 games, then this Braves team is going to be playing October baseball. Mark it, book
Yeah.
it, do what you got to do.
Yeah, we're gonna after the break, we're gonna break down the pitching matchups for this series. I do want to real quick before we do that, I do want to have a separate conversation about the decision to not move Chris Sale around. So Chris Sale is going to start Wednesday's game. He'll have an extra day of rest to get Wednesday's start. But because of that, he will not be available for Sunday's season finale against the Kansas City Royals. Chris Sale would be lined up to start game one of the wild card. And if you had moved him up to Tuesday, he would have been on regular rest for Sunday. It wouldn't have been early, short rest. He hasn't done that all year. Wouldn't have been short rest. He'd be on regular rest for Sunday. And if you didn't need him, then you could push him back to Monday. Is it a good idea or a bad idea to not have the likely Cy Young winner and Triple Crown winner pitch twice in the final week when you need to win to make the postseason?
Yeah, I pondered this a few times since the decision came out of what the rotation was going to look like for the Braves. And at first, I was honestly just a little upset. I wanted to see Sale go one more time and thinking that him being in 162 would be the best way for the Braves to ensure that they can make it into the postseason. But as I take a step back a little farther, Lindsay, and dig into this, as long as you have him pitch one game in the Met series, which is arguably the most important series for the rest of the way, I think we can all agree on that,
Yep.
then I think it's more important to have him ready as your game one starter to set the tone in the postseason. So I think of course the Royals series is very important, but if you can set the tone and you can win the series against the Mets and have Sale as your middleman in that series, basically be the pivot, be the swing man, if you will, to make sure that they can win the series, especially if they start off hot tonight. I think that is even more important. And going into the postseason, having him fresh and ready for game one to set that tone because you're not having an off day or an off week like you have in the past in the postseason, I
Mhm.
think that's going to be even bigger moving forward. So, wasn't very happy at first, but looking at it big picture, I think it's the right decision.
Yeah. Some of the Braves beat writers, I think David O'Brien's the big one's been harping on this, has cited the velocity issues in that last start for Sale as the reason why he thinks they're giving him an extra day of rest. I wrote about this in the takeaways, pushing back because his velo was down in 2 consecutive starts. I think the Rockies were the second one of those. And then he rebounded with his highest velos of the season against the Dodgers the next time out. And so I don't think the velo concerns are that big of a deal. I do agree with you, though, that if Chris Sale isn't available to pitch in the wild card round, I don't know what kind of success Atlanta has. Because, yes, I trust Max Fried. I trust Spencer Schwellenbach. I trust Charlie Morton. But this is a different team when you have to face Chris Sale. He's been so good. He has the MLB record for consecutive starts of 2 or less runs. Like, it's not an all-time. This is not like a heater this year. This is literally historic production he's been able to do. And it feels if you handle your business in this series, then you don't have to sweat every individual game against the Royals. You still have to handle your business. You still have to win 2 out of 3 probably. But if you can handle your business against the Mets, you've done what you have to do to get in the postseason. Having Sale for game one is more important than having him in game 162 and then not getting him in that wild card round. So I think I'm where you are on this, where I didn't love it at first. The more I think about it, the more I'm okay with it. Although I don't think that velocity is really a big issue. Everybody's making it out to be.
No, I agree. I'm with you.
Yeah. In just a minute, let's break down those 3 individual pitching matchups, what Atlanta's going to deal with coming from the Mets. Obviously, you get their best starters, like we knew that was going to happen. And then could both these teams make it in somehow? We'll do all of that next, right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsay, Crosby, Christian, Rauh. You can find all of our written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack. Lots of great stuff going up recently from both me and Christian, all about your Atlanta Braves. So, 3 games here tonight. Luis Severino versus Spencer Schwellenbach. I would argue Severino's been their best starter this year. 11-6, 3.79 ERA versus Schwelly, 7-7, 361. Both these guys have been good. The big thing here is Atlanta has seen Severino twice this year. Schwellenbach has seen the Mets once, and Schwellenbach was dominant against them. So let me read this to you real quick. Severino has no decisions against Atlanta this year. Both of the games were 5 innings with 2 earned runs allowed, 4 hits in one, 7 in the other, struck out a total of 10 batters, walked 5, gave up 1 homer. Okay. Schwellenbach, however, July 27th, 7 scoreless innings, 2 hits, no walks, 11 strikeouts. Given, with the caveat of this is a different Spencer Schwellenbach right now because of the workload, we've seen the walks be a little bit more prominent than they were in that heater that he was having mid-year. Is it fair to say that Atlanta has the advantage pitching-wise over the Mets in this one?
I'd push back a little bit just because of where we are in the postseason. And although Schwellenbach has been great, I'm agreeing with you that Severino has been the Mets' best pitcher so far this season, at least the most consistent. And when you look at his numbers just in the month of September, the 4 starts he's had, they're all quality starts and they're all at least 6 innings long. I will say this, I think this is the perfect matchup for the Mets right off the bat. I think this is the
Mhm.
best pitcher to have as your game 1 starter in this series
Right.
because he's really going to set the tone. You could get maybe 5 innings from him and then have to rely more on your bullpen. You get maybe less than 5 innings of him. That's quite possible as well, and that's hopefully what the Braves can do and get to them and force the bullpen to force the hand. Or Severino has done this a couple times this year. You could get 6, 7, 8, even a complete game from Severino, and that would absolutely crush, I think, the Braves because they wouldn't be able to get to the bullpen. So I think that Severino is going to really set the tone for this entire series. That's why I think that I'm focusing on him. I think he's more of the focus here on what is going to be impactful for this series. So, as much as I think Schwellenbach is going to do good, and I have a lot of confidence in his game, my eyes are going to be all on Luis Severino and how he performs and how long he stays in the game, because I think that's going to dictate really that might be the deciding factor for this whole series. Like it might be, we might get some answers right away in game 1. Like we might not. We're definitely going to, I should say. It just depends how serious it's going to be. I think Severino is a key, a huge key.
Yeah, and some of your big hitters have good production against Severino this year. It or I guess in their careers, Matt Olson's 4 for 10 with an RBI. Marcell Ozuna's 2 for 4 with a homer and 3 RBI. Ramon Laureano's 2 for 4 against him, right? So you feel confident in your ability to hit Severino, but like you said, he's been on a heater recently, 4 consecutive quality starts, a grand total of 8 runs allowed in those 25 and 2/3 innings. So definitely a little bit daunting there. You got to come out hot. I still feel good about Schwellenbach. I do think you probably have a little bit of a shorter leash on him than usual. It's probably, I think your ask here is 5 innings. You're not asking for anything more than 5. Your bullpen's pretty rested. You had an off day yesterday. We took the day off too. Sorry, everybody. Thank you for coming back today. I do think that you ask him to go through 5, right? And if you have to pull him early, you pull him early because you can trust Dylan Lee. You can trust, Pierce Johnson, Joe Jimenez, Raisel Iglesias to go 4 innings if you need to total combined, not each one. 4 innings total. I still think you can trust Aaron Bummer, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, and you have Chris Sale as
The
your
next day.
starter the next day. So I agree. I think that you can afford to have the leash a little shorter. Now, if he's shoving, they better not take him out. So let's
Right.
be honest there, because we've seen Schwelly look really good in a couple
When he
starts
gets in a
as of late.
groove, he's in a
Right.
groove. Yeah.
100%. Like we've seen, he started off his career as one of the best pitchers in baseball history when it came to strikeout walk rate. So
Mhm.
if he gets into a groove, then yeah, you better keep him in. We don't have this conversation where why did they pull him early? I don't want to have that conversation.
All right, game 2, these are all 7:20 starts, by the way, I didn't mention that. They're all 7:20 starts. David Peterson versus Chris Sale. So you had righty-righty there. Now you have lefty. I do like this for Ozzy Albies, by the way. He only has to face one righty starter all series in Severino. He gets lefties in Peterson Manaea after this. But it's hard not to say Atlanta has the advantage in any Chris Sale start, right? This is they're 22-7 in his 29 starts this year. It feels any Chris Sale start, you have the advantage, and having him in game 2 is an advantage because you can put away the series early if you win tonight.
No, 100% you can put the series away. And I think that's why it's important to have him as your middle game starter. And I think it helps more of making that decision of why you didn't push him up. So, yeah, I do think that you have to keep a Chris Sale start as a favorite for the Braves. There's no doubt about it. But when you look at what you've seen from Peterson, he's been a pretty interesting pitcher, right? Playing devil's advocate a little bit here. What can Peterson give the Mets? And as of late, he hasn't been that great, right? He's gave up 4 earned runs in 2 of his last 4 starts. He hasn't made it through 5 in both those times. So, yeah, it's really interesting to see if he's going to be able to do that. So, if Severino gets pushed out fast and the bullpen gets going early for the Mets, that might cause a domino effect moving into game 2, especially if they can do it again. And that Braves offense, as they've been so hot over the last 30 days, you got to like what's from that. So, yeah, there's a big thing from Peterson here. I think the pattern that I think I'm starting to make here is that I like the matchups for the Braves. I like what we're seeing from them, but I think that the key for the matchups are going to be what the Mets side does in this, what Severino does. That's going to set the tone. What Peterson can hold on to, can he provide a little bit of length? I think that'll decide the swing here. But when you look at who's pitching on the other side with Schwellenbach and, of course, Chris Sale, I think you got to give the nods to Atlanta's pitching staff.
Yeah, the matchups here just really interesting. And like you said, he's been a little to the extremes in his last 7 starts. He has 4 quality starts. He goes over 7 innings in 3 of those. I'm sorry, in 4 of those. But his last, like you said, his last 3, 4 and a third, 4 earned runs, 5 total on 8 hits against Toronto, and then a rematch against Philly. He shuts them down, 1 run on 4 hits and 7 and 2/3. The next 5 days later, he faces them again. I hate these back-to-back starts. 4 runs or 5 runs, 4 earned on 8 hits and 3 and 2/3. Atlanta did okay against him last time. He took the loss on July 28th. It was 4 runs on 4 hits, 1 homer in 5 innings. It feels like Atlanta has the advantage against Peterson simply because he struggled a bit recently. Some of this is workload too. He started 114 innings. This was his innings. This is past his innings max the last 2 years. He had 105 and 2/3 in 22 and 111 last year. But feels like Atlanta has the advantage here because of Sale. And then you get into game 3, and this is Sean Manaea versus Max Fried. Manea's been incredibly impressive to me. I think he's on a heater right now. His last 7 starts, he's 3-0 with a 2.81 ERA, where his whole season ERA is like 3 and change. It's not like he's bad, but he's been on a heater recently. He's been able to go deep. His last 7 starts, he's made it into the 6th, or he's made it into the 7th all 7 times. 3 of those, he got 2 outs and then left the game early. The rest of them, he completed 7 innings. And the other thing that's tough, Atlanta has not seen Sean Manaea since 2022. And he arguably, I think he's with the Giants then, he arguably is a different pitcher than he was then. So I think this is the one that I'm actually the most worried about because you feel like your bullpen's better than theirs, but the guy in the last game is somebody who goes deep into games, and you're unlikely to be able to press that advantage by getting him out because you haven't seen him. He's been really good lately, and he's been going deep into games.
Yeah, if you're hoping to get to some of the Mets non-high leverage bullpen guys, it's got to happen in game 1 and game 2. It's not
Yeah.
going to happen in the last game of the series here. You mentioned the length that Manaea has provided. 10 of the last 11 starts for Manaea has gone at least 6 innings. There's only one blunder in there where it was a 3-inning go against the Seattle Mariners where he let up 3 runs across 4 hits. He walked 5 in that go around. So other than that, he has been phenomenal in his last 11 starts. And he's one of those reasons why we're looking at this Mets rotation without Kodai Senga, who only pitched 6 innings all year long, and and being surprised at how great they've looked. And really one of the reasons why this Mets team has been able to make this crazy run back into the postseason picture. But I'm with you. I think that if you are going to want to get to any of the bullpen, it's got to happen early because you're going to get length out of Benaya. It seems inevitable what we've seen from him over the past 2 months of work. So, yeah, I think that you're right. I think this could be a big deal. And if you're heading into the final game of the series as a split, that could be bad for the Braves. Looking at how Mania has performed over the last couple starts, really last half of his season. So yeah, really interesting. These matchups are going to be fascinating. I find it really interesting that the Mets are really posting their big three against the Braves. That's really what's happening here.
Mhm.
As we mentioned, Lindsay, this is really playoff baseball. We're getting
Yeah.
playoff baseball a week early, and how can you not be excited about it?
And arguably, this is Atlanta's big three as well. These are the three you'd pick to start your three postseason games if you had to pick right now. They'd probably pick Morton over Schwellenbach and piggyback them together because of the experience. But this is in a vacuum who I'd pick to start three games for the Braves in the postseason. So that makes sense. Braves starter in this one, Max Fried. He's 3-3 with a 2.86 ERA in his last 7 starts. But it's important to note 2 of those 3 losses were still quality starts. 3 runs in 7 innings against Philly, 3 runs in 6 innings against LA. Um, the last time out against the Mets, May 11th, 7 no-hit innings, 3 walks, 5 strikeouts, in a win, in a Braves win. So that was when he was focusing more on whiffs than on soft contact, but still, Max Fried's been good against the Mets. He's 4-1 with a 150 ERA in his last 5 starts against them dating back to 2022. So you like Max Fried, provided he's feeling good on this one. I want to real quick mention both teams, I think, could get in. You're in a situation here. The Mets are in the second place in the wild card. They're half a game up on Arizona. The Diamondbacks are 5-5 in their last 10 games. They've lost 2 straight. They lost last night to the Giants. They've got 2 more against the Giants and 3 against the wild card leading Padres, who are trying to push the Dodgers for the NL West. It's possible. It's unlikely, but it's possible if Atlanta can go 6-0 in these games and Arizona collapses against both the Giants and the Padres at home. Atlanta and the Mets could both get in no matter what happens in this series. Is that something we should even think about, or is that just don't even worry about that? Just focus on winning this series and we'll deal with this weekend when we get to this weekend.
I think you got to keep one eye on it, but it's obviously important that you got to focus on what's going on with the Braves. They do not have to win all 6 games for them to make the postseason. They own their own fate here because they're playing the Mets. Because you own the tiebreaker if you win this series, and you're only down 2 games heading into today. That's why it was so important to either remain at 2 games heading into this series, which they did, or get closer, which unfortunately they did not. But if they win this series 2 games to 1, and then sweep the Kansas City Royals, if they win 5 of 6 and the Mets sweep their series against the Brewers, they would be tied, but the Braves would own the tiebreaker and they would sneak into the final wild card spot, even if Arizona stayed ahead of them. So they own 5 of 6, 5 of 6 wins starting tonight. The Braves are in, regardless of anybody else, what anybody else does. So keep that in mind. They do control their own fate still. It's still there. I will mention this as well. On
Mhm.
Thursday's game is technically a makeup from April 10th. And that game is on 7:20 Eastern between the Mets and the Braves there. They play at 7:20, and then the Mets have to go right away, fly and play against the Milwaukee Brewers on Friday in another game that it's pretty quick there. So going
Ooh.
into that weekend series, that could play a role in the Mets game plan there. So just keep that in mind. I don't know if that'll do anything with the bullpen. Of course, Mania is that last game starter, so it might not matter, but it's just worth keeping an eye on there if something does go astray in this series.
I forgot about that. And then another complicating factor, not that I hate to bring this up, but there is a hurricane that's going to hit the Gulf and head north. And it's possible that there is heavy rain in Atlanta on, I believe it's supposed to be either Wednesday or Thursday. And
Well, starting Wednesday, yeah, hurricane sale. Yeah, it's starting
yeah.
Wednesday.
Oh, no, it says tropical storm conditions possible on Thursday. It looks like the updated weather as of this morning It looks like they're saying there's chances of rain on Wednesday and Thursday, 90% chance of rain sometime on Thursday. But the actual heavy rainfall would be Friday. But if one of these games gets impacted by weather, I don't know how MLB fixes this other than make them play on Monday. I don't
Right.
see any other way to make these up, especially with both teams having games on Friday. So this is potentially really interesting what the weather could do to this whole thing. MLB will not just cancel this game. They will make them make it up because it matters. I
Yeah.
just don't know if you could do it other than Monday. And if it is Monday, maybe you can get Sale one more time.
Yeah, think about this. If you get rain on Thursday, maybe you do get the bullpen more. Maybe the start for Mania is impacted and he has to get pushed early. Who knows if that happens, if that
That'd be
runs into that
huge.
situation. That would be huge though. But if there was a delay or there was a postponement, would they impact the Brewers series for the Mets and push that into a possible doubleheader to make the Mets and Braves stay one more day in Atlanta?
That's
It's
interesting. I
terrible.
hadn't
It's terrible,
Yeah.
but that might be their only choice.
Would they push the Friday Brewers game to Saturday to
Doubleheader.
give them I hadn't thought of that. That's really interesting. I'll have to look and see if that's happened before. Off the top of my head, I can't remember a time that's
I've
happened,
never heard of it, but
but
I don't know any other choices they might have if that's the case.
that's definitely the easiest way to take care of it. Yeah. Okay. We are over on time on this one, but real quick, predictions for this series. I'm assuming no weather impacts. I'm saying 2-1. Atlanta wins the series. I think game 3 is the one that they don't take.
Okay, and that's probably best case scenario, to be honest, because
Yeah.
you are going to have the first 2 wins. You get yourself set up for the Kansas City series that you have the tiebreaker in your hand so you can play the right relievers for that final game of the series. So best case scenario for the Braves to win that series is that role. I think the Braves also win the series 2-1, but I'm going to say that's not the way they do it. I think that they have trouble tonight. And I think that's just because we've seen such consistency from Severino, but it won't be because of the offense. I think the offense is going to continue to keep giving us confidence. I think it's a close game. I think all the games are close. And yeah, 2-1 Atlanta, but tonight is the game that they fall.
Got it. This has been Braves Today for Tuesday, September 24th. If you're listening on audio, do us a favor, leave us a 5-star review. Helps folks discover the show and find out it's actually a good one. If you're on YouTube, leave us a comment down below, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell when we drop a new episode. And until next time, this has been Braves Today.